So you mentioned the difficulties that this whole the feminist thrust presents to women in terms of having it all and that being a myth. But you also did mention that feminism is a pathway to apostasy. And in your book, you do outline several stages. It doesn't start off with apostasy, far from it. That's the end stage. I think it's stage 5 or something, where after a series of struggling with the text and the hadith and the ulama and the scholarly rulings over the centuries, ultimately the Muslim feminist, as you understand them, will end up apostatizing. What is this final end stage? Why do some women anyway apostatize from Islam?
Well, that's not their conscious goal, or they don't necessarily consciously see it happening. It's just something that they fall into because of what feminism commits them to intellectually and emotionally. Because the way that I describe the stages is that the first stage is basically coming from perhaps legitimate grievances with certain Muslim male figures that they see in their lives, maybe at the mosque or in the broader community, and they have these criticisms and they feel like, or grievances, and they feel like feminism addresses those grievances. But the thing is that feminism commits the feminist to a broader paradigm or a broader commitment, such as the idea that patriarchy is inherently oppressive, male authority is inherently male authority is inherently oppressive, and anything that lacks female representation is inherently illegitimate. So that takes them down this path. So initially it starts with these perhaps legitimate grievances with a local imam or some figure somewhere in the Muslim community, but then because of these other commitments, that criticism cannot just stop with the local imam. It has to be extended to, all of the Islamic scholarly tradition, because when we look at the Islamic tradition, it is predominantly Muslim men who are the main intellectuals and the main scholars of this tradition. And that's not to say that there have been female scholars, because there have been. Yeah. But they were definitely a very small minority. So then we have to ask the question, or the feminists will ask the question, why is this? And the answer that feminism gives is that the men of this tradition have been marginalizing women deliberately and have been actually silencing these women or holding them back, preventing them from speaking. That's the feminist answer. So what this colors the entire scholarly tradition. You look at someone like Imam Ghazali. Why isn't Imam Ghazali lifting up women, and why is he not bringing someone alongside him and trying to champion women's voices? Clearly he's marginalizing women. He's actually silencing women. He has all of this authority, and never once does he use it to promote the visibility of a woman's voice, for example. These are the kinds of thoughts that will inevitably come once you've bought in to the feminist mindset. And so this extends through all of Islamic scholarship. And once you have undermined the moral legitimacy of all of these Islamic scholars, then really how can you access the Islam? How can you access Islam itself? The only reason that we have Islam, the only reason that we have the Quran, or we have hadith, or we have fiqh, we have, tafsir, or the spiritual sciences of tasawwuf, or any of these important Islamic sciences, ulum, is because of this vast, rigorous tradition of Islamic transmission, the scholarly tradition. This is the only reason that we have it. So then you have fundamentally undermined that tradition just because of your feminist commitments. But it doesn't even stop there, because you have to start questioning hadith. You have to start questioning the Quran. And this is where, because it's questionable whether you can be a Muslim if you've rejected the Islamic tradition, because you have no basis for making claims about the Quran and Hadith, or you're just being intellectually inconsistent. For example, you say, "Oh yeah, I believe in, this interpretation of the Quran." Okay, well, where did you get that interpretation of the Quran? Did you take it from a scholar? From Ibn Kathir or Imam Qurtubi, from the tafsir tradition, or you just happen to have a understanding of the Quran on your own that happens to match the orthodox interpretation? How convenient. But in reality, we see most of these feminists completely heterodox and bring these deviant, bizarre interpretations of the Quran, and academics such as Amina Wadud, for example, who says outright that we should have the ability to say no to the Quran. If we have a moral problem with something that we read in the Quran and we see that this is contrary to our conscience, then we should have the moral right to say no to the Quran. And she's being infamous.
It's a very difficult thing to understand, because the Quran describes itself as the actual speech of God himself. So it sounds like they're inviting people to say no to God. And people who say no to God are not normally characterized as believers, rather as anti-believers and so on. I'm reading from a very moderate translation here. This is a translation of the Quran by Abdul Halim, the famous British scholar, and just the famous 4:34, Surah 4, verse 34, which you allude to several times in your book, and there are different translations of it. And this is a very moderate translation. It says, "Husbands should take good care of their wives with the bounties God has given to some more than others, and with what they spend out of their own money. Righteous wives are devout and guard what God has given them, what God would have them guard in their husband's absence," and so on. But this is clearly patriarchal, and this is God speaking. If you're a Muslim, obviously. And there are many similar verses in the New Testament and in the Jewish Bible, and probably in most scriptures in the world's religions, if not all scriptures of the world's religions. So to say no to God, whatever tradition you're in, is quite a big price to pay for your conscience, as you put it.
Yeah, this is actually the nature of feminism. From the first wave of feminism, activists like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, for example, or Susan B. Anthony, they were very rabidly anti-religious. And they identified, this is the main support behind patriarchy as a concept within society is religion. And so they understood very well their project to attack the church and to attack the Bible. They even wrote, the Woman's Bible as a kind of act of defiance against the church. And we're talking about the 19th century. Imagine someone like a Muslim today. We can complain about Amina Wadud saying no to the Quran, but to her credit, she hasn't written a woman's Quran. Right? So these are the type of people that Muslim feminists hold in high regard as the founders of the feminist movement, and it's anti-religion from its very beginning.
So it seems to me, and people do this, they not just on this issue, but on the issue, the homosexuality issue and so on. They can say about the Bible, the Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 1 or 1 Corinthians 6:9, he didn't really understand modern understandings of homosexuality. And therefore what he said is strictly cultural, it's irrelevant, we leave it 2,000 years ago. But you're talking about the Quran, which every syllable claims to be from God. You can't say that God didn't understand. He is eternally present. He understands everything. And this is his final commandment, his final word to mankind from a Muslim point of view. So you can't make that hermeneutical move. You're simply not open to one, I don't think, Islamically anyway.
Yeah, I completely agree. The Quran is setting a moral standard from the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam till the end of time. And if you're going to have a moral objection, that's going to create problems for your faith.
Okay, well that's very, very interesting. Thank you for that. Perhaps moving on now to